Hello, and welcome to Shalom Letters Podcast with Brian Newman, author, lyricist, talk show host, dad and veteran, and one of my best friends. I'm Melissa Collins, ministry partner of Brian's, and also the voice of Miss Esther Ava Hill of the Torah Town cartoon series found on YouTube. But welcome to our podcast. We're a show where listeners can write into us with topics and questions, and then we provide biblical commentary and even dream interpretation, all through a biblical perspective. So usually I interview Brian, but tonight we're shaking things up a bit. Well, I guess you could say the Holy Spirit has been shaking me, but I'll pump the brakes on that for just a second and just hello, Brian. How are you?
Hey, I was excited to hear about your Hebrew shindig.
Yes, it
You
was.
went to Missouri.
It was what amazing Hebrew shindig. I'm
Awesome.
just I've said 100 times that I'm speechless, but somehow I keep rambling about it. I've
Mm.
literally not shut up about it for the past 24 hours.
Yeah, I heard about an hour of that. your, your husband got about 5 hours of it the way home.
And it was an 8-hour drive. He got a full 8
Oh, he got
hours.
8 hours. He got a full shift of it. Well, he gave him a lunch break.
So
He
quick.
he's went to the store and hung out for an hour.
Yeah, so everybody pray for Chad Collins.
Chad is not a talker.
I've exercised his ears for sure today, for sure.
I'd like to see that. Oh, but did he have a good time too?
Yeah, he had a great time. We were just talking before I got on the podcast here, and he's just so pumped up and in awe
Hmm.
at the chain of events. So, and it was very, very hands on for him. And Chad, I'm sorry if you're listening. I'm going to talk about you for just a minute. I'm sure he's listening. There's no if about it. So sorry, babe. But he's not one to really, put himself out there when it comes to, the praise and the worship and
Hmm.
everything. He's the back row. You know that.
Well, that's me
Every
too. It's outside of podcasts. I'm probably hiding in the kitchen. I'll actually go help out in the kitchen at events just so I don't have to be in the middle of the crowd. I'll help out in the kitchen. I'll take the trash out. I'll volunteer for security just so I have to like be between people that are shoulder to shoulder and really loud. So I totally relate.
Yeah, yeah. So these last couple of months between the Phil Wickham experience, which should probably be its own podcast, and then tonight, he's not just been hearing me tell about it or
Mhm.
hearing others tell about it. He's seeing it and he's feeling it. So he's pretty pumped up about it
So he
too,
got
though.
blessed too.
Oh, for sure.
Awesome.
He said a few minutes ago, he's like, man, I felt something.
Awesome. Awesome.
Man, a few words, but that he carried a lot of weight with that when he's like, I felt something.
Well, the less you say, the more it means.
Hmm. Well, maybe I should take that to
Well, my grandpa, he was best friends with Beaver Professor from Walking Tall. Back the sheriff back in
Yeah.
'70s. They're actually friends because they were sheriffs and or he's deputies or sheriffs in adjoining counties. And but they always said, "Walk softly and carry a big stick,"
Hmm.
and that's what Beaver Buster literally did was walk softly, carry a big stick because he worked on 2x4. But anyway, and my grandpa was like that. My dad's side, it was didn't say much when he said something though. Everybody stopped to listen,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of truth that I think it's also in the Proverbs. It's about it's just best to keep your words few, and when you do that, people value them more.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Hmm.
yeah,
That
Chad
was
has that same
beautiful.
quality that walk softly, carry a big stick. Say what you mean what you say. And I'm so glad he got blessed by it because people are very social and very social media oriented, are always constantly interacting with people, at least on social media. But then
Hmm.
it's a whole different thing in person. But if you're not on social media all the time and you're kind of rural area, then it's really hard to get to know other people.
Oh yeah, and that's him. He's completely Facebookless and no social media. He would still have a Razor flip phone if he could buy one, but I
But you can
finally got
now.
him.
You can get a flip phone now.
Shh, no,
Okay.
don't say that,
You
Chad.
sold you
I will
sold
have to.
phones. You know this. You know this. You
I
sold
will.
phones for a living.
I will have to edit this now.
When's his birthday? I'll send him one.
No, it's June, but no, don't. I like the iMessages. No.
The emojis.
We will keep him in a smartphone. But yeah, so he went along to the conference with me. And the conference we're talking about, I guess
So
that
when
would
you
help
tie it
if I
all in,
mentioned
like,
that.
what are we
Yeah.
talking about?
So Jim Staley with Passion for Truth Ministries had a conference this weekend. It was a one-day conference. It was in Branson, Missouri, along with Nathan Harmon of the Wilderness Driven Family. It was held at the Freedom Encounter building there in Branson. And it was about 9 hours of just being immersed in the word, of worship, of prayer, of love and fellowship. It was a revival. That's what it was. It was just, again, I'm gonna ramble probably, but I just, it's been over. It ended at 9 p.m. So it's been over, a little more than 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
My adrenaline has not come down at all. I don't know if you can tell. But okay, you can tell.
I thought you got the IV for Starbucks installed in your car finally. It's the IV drip. It comes down the rearview mirror and goes straight into the vein.
No,
driving to work.
A small cup of coffee. That's all I've had all day.
So it's Jim Staley's conference with Nathan Harmon. It's called 12-1.
Yes.
And it was today, which is Sunday, January 30th.
No, it was actually yesterday.
Yesterday. Oh, you drove back all day today. So
yes.
It was January 29th on Sabbath. And
yeah, we started around lunchtime-ish.
yes,
got
Sabbath,
there
8-9 hours.
Which is kind of a good lead in. So I'm not sure exactly what time we started. The difficulty and the obstacles of not only, people getting there, my family included, but other families that I talked to while we were there, other families that I wanted to meet up with and then weren't able to. So the participants, the audience had a hard time getting there with tons of opposition, but Jim Staley and the other hosts, because there were so many people, so many ministries worked together to put this on. I know Lion and Lamb was involved and several others to make this event happen, but they were all just met with obstacle after setback all the way up. I mean, it was sickness, it was, mechanical breakdowns. It was, just minutes before it was supposed to start, the entire internet went out completely. Gosh. Yes. And so they had to call in the internet provider to come in where we could get started. And
because you can't live stream without it.
Exactly. Yeah. There was, so much of it ran off the internet.
There's a theory that when it says Satan's the prince of the air, it means prince of the airwaves. Because airwaves wasn't a really term back then, but airwaves, like all the media, the podcast, the radio, the internet, email, telephones, all these various means of communicating ideas.
Wow, I didn't even put that together. And that plays right along with, there was a vision that Jim shared that I think it was someone, and I may recount this incorrectly, so go to Jim's page to get the full story.
What is his page?
I think he has a page, I think that may just be Jim Staley, but then the Passion for Truth Ministries also has a page as well. And then, of course, passionfortruth.com.
Are they back up as a ministry?
Yeah.
As a church? So they're keeping the original name? And
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Passion for Truth 2.0, I think is how he calls it.
Okay. Guess I was making sure because I haven't heard much from him in several years. So I don't know if he started a brand new thing. If the audience might not be aware either. If he started a brand new thing or if he's just revamping Passion for Truth. So he's doing the Passion for Truth again.
Same name.
Okay.
But I'll get to that. It's okay. Better. So new and improved. But he had shared a vision as they were facing all of this opposition that I believe it was someone on their worship team had I believe it was an open vision of the enemy like in a control room you
Mhm.
know, with like the different keyboards and the different monitors,
Mhm.
you know,
Prince of the
like,
airwaves.
yes, fighting them that way.
Mhm.
So what you said, that perfectly matches the vision that they had. So they immediately started praying. Of course, the internet provider was able to quickly come in and get it back up and running. But almost every time, if you go back and watch the replay, almost every time Jim would get the mic,
Mhm.
his mic would go out, and he'd have to go get another one. It was just every time, every time. I mean, it was just the wildest thing. But the opposition of the enemy not wanting him to speak was
Mhm.
very clear, very very clear.
And that brings something to mind too, because I know we have deacons and elders and pastors and apostles and prophets, and, all these people in the church, these writers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the unsung heroes are the audio visual people.
Oh, for sure.
You cannot do anything without them. And then you don't ever see their face, never know their name. But I mean, it would be literally impossible without them. Like you do all the tech for a podcast here because I wanted to do one for years, but I had no idea what the buttons do. So Melissa jumped on and helped me. For like I've wanted to do a podcast for like 5 years now, but I couldn't do it on my own. So Melissa knows all the tech stuff. So she does our audio, video plus co-hosting. But I mean, like we have Matt Hanna at my congregation, and he does that because we couldn't do anything. We couldn't do live stream, we couldn't do recording, we couldn't do any of that without him. So I really appreciate all the people that know how to do these things. I think it's a special gifting because when the tabernacle was being built, there was a Danite and a Levite, a Holiab and Bezalel. God gave them special gifting to make the tabernacle and also to teach other people how to make materials for the tabernacle. It was a
Yes.
supernatural download of how to, because they're slaves in Egypt for 400 years. They weren't goldsmiths or silversmiths or embroiders or carpenters. They were all slaves making bricks. But God gave them a supernatural ability to do that so the ministry could continue. And I think it's the same way with the audiovisual people. A lot of times, like it's a gifting, it's a calling.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just some side person. Also, people that cook in the kitchen, all the conferences I've been to, everybody's hungry. All the ladies that cook, I mean, the people do the gift of helps. They're passing out water, setting up chairs. So I was giving a shout out to those folks real quick. And in this case, it seems like they kind of saved the day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because they had some darts thrown at them this weekend for sure.
So
But
how many microphones did he go through? I was like two, three, or four, or higher,
at least it was every
and
time
none
he
of them
spoke.
worked.
They would start cutting out. He would get
Mhm.
a few sentences out, and then nothing. He would have to switch. I
Wow.
mean, it almost became comical. It's like, oh yeah, I did it
You
again.
lose your train of thought and you get self conscious.
No, if he did, you couldn't tell because it wasn't Jim speaking. It was the Holy Spirit. It was just anointed from start to finish. So I'll give a little bit of my experience, and again, I'm warning, I'm gonna ramble, but so we get there and just, first of all, you see the meme of Buzz Lightyear, Zitsy everywhere, it's just like, oh, it's like, oh, I'm home. And, the people in the parking lot, it's Shabbat Shalom, how are you? It's just love everywhere. It was just amazing. So we walk in, we register, we walk into the auditorium. It's general admission, so you don't have assigned seating.
Mhm.
So we're not we're just excited to be there. We're not thinking about the Holy Spirit directing our steps. We're just looking for a chair. Where do we want to sit? Chad
Mhm.
wants to sit in the back.
Yeah.
I can't see that well. So we're having this conversation. I'm
Chad
like,
and Melissa are
oh,
both vertically challenged.
yes.
So if
To
some
put it
tall
nicely.
person's in front of them, the back, this is not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. We spent many a ball games looking at the back of people's heads. So,
I think in Lord of the Rings, where they put him on the dwarf guy on the helmet so he can see where the orcs are. He's up the castle wall. I can't see the battle.
they need, you know what? They need to invent some kind of stadium seating that like essentially functions as booster seats. That would
That would
be
help. Yeah.
beneficial. Yeah. So so we're walking in. We decide, I'm not going to be able to see if we sit in the back. So we're having this conversation as we're walking. We're walking a little bit closer to the front. We want to be close to the front, but not too close to the front that, we're on live stream the whole time. So, we're trying to find the happy medium. So we go about halfway down And about halfway down, there's this wider row, which, would obviously we didn't need the leg room, seriously. So, but we kind of head down this aisle, and we're actually going to sit in the aisle, in the row in front of it, rather. And so as we kind of cut the corner and we're going into this, wide area, which, would probably be for like wheelchair accessible, something like that. We're heading down this row, and the lady in the second seat, it's mostly, I think at that point it was a completely empty row except for the ladies in the first two seats. The lady in the second seat, picks up her things out of the third seat, and she's like, well, at that point she just picked her stuff up and kind of motioned, and I'm like, oh, no, you're fine. I'm going to the row in front of you. No worries. I'm cracking jokes. We don't need the leg room. And we're laughing. So we're going. I just go on to the row in front, and I'm about to sit down. And she, Chad was kind of behind me, and she kind of said more to him. And she's like, no, y'all come sit here. Come sit with me. And he was like, hey, babe, she said we can sit with her. Come on, let's just sit with her. I'm like, okay. So we go. We sit down with this lady. Now, we're from the middle of nowhere, Kentucky.
I'm from the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, if you guys can't tell by both of our accents.
So, I mean, literally the middle of nowhere. We've got 3 stoplights. So, my pastor and his wife, they live off grid. They do not have social media of any kind at all. I'm not even sure if she has a smartphone. So, back on that topic, but maybe she does. I don't know. Anyway, definitely no social media presence whatsoever. They're off grid. And so I'm kind of come back to that. So I'm sitting down with this lady, and we were kind of chatting. We're looking around, and I'm telling her, I'm looking around because there was another couple that I was going to meet. I've been this will all tie in later. There was a lady that I've been Facebook friends with for 8 years. Her Facebook page said she was from Louisville for the last 8 years due to the photos with landmarks in Louisville, and it said Louisville. I thought she lived in Louisville. Also from Kentucky, but 2.5 hours, away, because she lived, as far as I know, in civilization. So looking for her, and so I'm looking around and looking at all the people. I mean, there's probably 2,000 people here. And so I turn around kind of behind me and look, and I see a lady that I'm Facebook friends with. I follow her on TikTok. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Jess. I really want to meet her. And she said, oh yeah. She said, this lady sitting next to me. She said, I got to meet her at the Isaiah 4610 conference. And she's like, I got to meet her there. She's like, funny story. So if you went to the conference, and you're listening, you probably know this story. But apparently there was a bear who stayed in the tree above the women's restroom, and this bear would come down.
Wait. A bear lived in the tree?
Well, he would stay there during this conference.
A bear, but like an actual bear?
Yes.
Is in the tree?
Yes.
Near the bathroom?
Yes, where they camped.
Gosh.
Yes.
Oh, everybody's camping?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was like a conference building, like a stadium.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't remember. It wasn't I don't think it was Sukkot. No, because they went to Zach's for Sukkot. So it was just, I guess, a conference where because they have they had a campground, so they were all there. I'm not even sure.
Okay.
Maybe Arkansas. I believe Arkansas.
So we in Tennessee, we had the first Sukkot I was here. The people were literally worried about a bear coming and getting them in the middle of the night. It was East Tennessee. There are bears here too. So never had that concern before.
So if you ever meet anybody that went to this past Isaiah 46, I think it's 4610 conference, I'll have to look it up in a moment. You'll have to ask them about the bear story, because I've heard it so many times. So she starts to tell me this story that I'd heard so many times, that it was Jess's cooler that the bear kept getting into. So, that was funny. So she was telling me that, and I was kind of laughing and saying, I've heard this story before. My pastor's wife was telling me this story. I'm like, my pastor and his family went to this conference. And, it's just the natural flow of conversation. She naturally asked, "Oh, who's your pastor?" Thinking there's
Mhm.
probably a couple thousand people at least at that conference too. What's the odds of her knowing meeting them? Even meeting them. They're off grid.
Yeah,
And
and it's a big country, and people all over the United States are here. It's not just like a local.
oh,
But,
exactly.
it's not the next town over. Bumping somebody at the Walmart. You're in Kentucky. They're in Missouri.
Hmm.
It's a conference in Missouri, and there's people from all over the country there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And at this point, I didn't know where she was from. I just know she was sitting next to me, and she went to this conference, the same conference with thousands of people that my pastor and his family had gone to from middle of nowhere, Kentucky. So she's like, "What's your pastor's name?" And so I told her, and she's like, and she called his wife's name.
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah." And so we're both sitting there, mouths open, like, "How do you know my pet?" And she starts naming their kids. We're just like in
Favorite
awe.
breakfast cereal.
I'm like, "What?" And she grabs her phone. "She's like my best friend." I'm like, "No, she's my best friend." So we're like, "What?" We just came from different parts of the United States,
Hmm.
sat down next to each other in Branson, Missouri, and we have the same best friend.
Well, you said was it like she like scrolling through the phones like the last person she
Yeah,
texted or
that's the
something?
last person she texted.
That's amazing.
Like that was her proof. She pulls out her phone. It's like right
Yeah.
there. There's her name.
Well, that goes back to a biblical principle of Yeshua said if you lose, you give up family to follow him, you'll get 100 times as much. You give up fields, you get 100 times as much. And I always thought, oh, that must be in the kingdom when you get to heaven. But sometimes a lot of people do lose physical family over it. Either you totally lose them, or you're just not close like you used to be. But these things like this, your family does get multiplied. Your spiritual family gets multiplied in numbers very quickly or immediately or in an instant, far greater than your blood family. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you're a real family, you share things like an axe. Like if you give up one field, that's okay. You've got 50 new best friends who have 50 fields of their own. So you're not going to starve. So you get reimbursed for all the family and the friendship and all that you lose normally when you come into this because you become less like the world and therefore there's less people you can really connect with. But he totally supernaturally brings people together
Yeah, I mean,
to
it
replace what
was,
you lost and
yeah,
then some.
totally supernatural moment. We are sitting there completely in awe at the father directing us because we almost sat in the back and then we
Yeah.
almost went to the row forward, and there
You
was so
could have
much back.
messaged her so many times.
Yes, but then he had me sit down next to her, and it's
Mhm.
clearly like, okay, we're having a moment, like God put us here, like this. We're in this moment of recognition, and my friend from Louisville, here she comes. She's waving and smiling, and so I hop out of my chair and I run to meet her, and I'm hugging her, and meeting her husband as well for the first time. And
Mhm.
everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, you just met?" We're like, "Yeah, kind of. Yeah, we just met." We've known each other 8 years, but we just met. And so my husband walks up, and I'm introducing her. I'm like, "Hey, this is my friend from Louisville that I was telling you about." And she's like, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm not from Louisville anymore." Well, I'm still from Louisville, but she's like, "We've been in Arkansas for years now." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were in Arkansas." So, we're standing there, we're chatting, and we're catching up. Oh, and I even forgot to tell you this earlier. She's like, "I was looking on your Facebook page." She said, "We have a mutual friend." And I'm thinking she's going to name off someone who's a Torah keeper.
Yeah, yeah.
No. Our mutual friend is a lady that I met probably, oh my goodness, probably 15 years ago, who was very, very key in my complete life change and
Hmm.
changing my spiritual walk. Um, I guess at some point I'll share my testimony, but I was in a really, really bad place in life, and I knew I needed deliverance ministry,
Hmm.
and I Googled it. Well, actually, it was a friend of mine from Nashville who you know the story about the divine meeting of the Salvation Army. So it was
The Berry
kind
Hill
of,
Salvation Army.
yes, Berry Street, yes. So, man, we could do a podcast on that one too.
Yeah.
But
Let's
from
get Laura on for that.
that moment, my friend who suggested that I go to that church that day,
Mm-hmm.
he was like, why don't you see if there's a deliverance ministry closer to your home in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky? Well, at the time, I had a job who helped me travel, and I was traveling throughout Louisville at times. Googled deliverance ministry, met a wonderful pastor from, I think he's from Africa, and his ministry, I guess, assistant ministry partner was
Mm-hmm.
this precious little lady who her name was Carol,
Mm-hmm.
took me under her arm, loved me, prayed for me, discipled me, changed this lady changed my life with her prayers for me and her guidance. I mean, hands down, I have to give her so much credit for the work that she did in me, through Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just an evangelical church there that I just happened to Google it. I never attended church there, but I
Mm-hmm.
would have meetings sometimes there, throughout the week with her when I was
For
in
your job.
town.
Oh, you would go there for your job, and then you had meetings with her.
Yeah, I would have
Yes,
meetings with her after hours. Yeah. So anyway, that was the mutual friend that I had in common with
wow,
this
and this lady
lady
that
from
tortured her.
Arkansas who I met then in Branson. So we start having this moment then, like, oh my gosh, we both know Carol. And so we're sharing stories about how instrumental Carol was in both of our
Mm-hmm.
lives. And just, I believe Carol is passed now, but just being able to share those memories, it was just amazing to share the impact that she had had on both of our lives. And
That's what keeps physical families together usually is memories, like the same grandmother, same aunt, same childhood experiences. Then you grow up, move apart, different parts of the country, but you have memories of the same person that might have passed. But this is like the spiritual level of, it's like you both had the same favorite aunt or something.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
never didn't grow up together, but you're the same favorite aunt spiritually.
yes, yes. And so anyway, so she begins to tell me, hey, obviously I'm not in Louisville anymore. She's like, I've been in Arkansas for years, but she's like, we're really struggling to find fellowship. We don't know anybody here. We've been here so many years and we just can't find anybody. I'm like, hang in there. And so I kind of, give her testimony about how we didn't either for 10 years and now
Mm-hmm.
they're everywhere, and was trying to encourage her. And so I go back to sit down and let them get settled in. They ended up sitting in the two seats that Chad and I were originally going to sit in. And so they're sitting in front of us. I go back and sit down. And so I'm telling my new friend, that went to the Isaiah 46:10 conference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling her this second amazing moment that just happened over there. And I'm, telling her all this, and I'm like, my mind is blown. I just had this
Yeah.
God moment with you. I just had this God moment with her.
You had a good kind of
And
come apart. You had to come apart in a good way.
oh yeah, well it continues because I go on to tell her then, what we were chatting about. I'm like, yeah, she's from Arkansas. She can't find any fellowship. So my new friend grabs me by the arm and she's like, what? She's from Arkansas. She can't find any fellows. She's like, I'm from Arkansas.
I can't find any fellowship.
So immediately, like we all reconnect again, and so they're talking, and they're not super duper. They're not in the same town or anything, but they're definitely within driving distance. And so everybody's adding each other on Facebook, making these connections. Like, oh yeah, we know this person in common, and we know this person in common. Let's plan something. Things are happening. So, we're just in awe, and then this is before the conference even starts, Brian. This is
Well,
what
it's the rule of a recompense in the Torah. If a thief steals something, you get it paid back 5 times. And I think sometimes happens like, you've been robbed of fellowship all these years or robbed of friendships, and all of a sudden, boom, it's independent, it's Justice Day. And then it
yes.
all comes back. Like, you missed all this, but you're getting it back in abundance. It's like, oh, I made one
Mm-hmm.
friend on Facebook. And I was like, no, you all of a sudden have all these people that you have all these connections with that you missed all these years. It's a recompense. And if any of you guys need to find local Hebrews, Messianics, storekeepers, go to shalomtoyourheart.com and look under the way and look under Hebrews nearby. There was a regional group started for every state or every area of the country. You can see your little region, like there's an Arkansas group and a Tennessee group and a Texas group
A
and
Kentucky group.
a Kentucky group, and they're all listed on there. Go to shalomtoyourheart.com and look up the way, and then Hebrews nearby. And there's several fellowship finders as well for different organizations, and there's also a Facebook group for each individual group or each state or each region. So Arkansas Messianic Torah Fellowship is the Arkansas one. So, but there's a little, you'll see the state name on there or the listing of the states. It's like Southwest is like Arizona, Utah, Nevada all together.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, look on it and you can join the group, and it's like a billboard. Just say whatever city you're in, and there'll be people there that are probably close by or they know someone there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a useful tool to accelerate these kind of meetings. So the conference hadn't even started yet, and you had a.
Oh, I mean, our cups runneth over. I mean, we were already so full. Again, no Wi-Fi. Conference hasn't even started. It's not been one word preached from the stage, and yet we're having church. We are having church in the audience, in the seating. We are just, and this is just one row. If this much happened in my little row before the event, I cannot wait to hear the testimonies
Mm-hmm.
that come from the other rows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if this much happened in my little row, even before it started, what else do we not know about yet? So the conference goes on, and it gets started, and I'll just be transparent. There's times when I'm just dealing with a lot of inhibitions, and the Holy Spirit will tell me something, and I'm like, that's just in my head.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what I'm hearing, especially if it's telling me to do something I don't really want to do. I start, nope. So at this point in the conference, we're pretty early in at the point that I'm talking about. I know worship was going on at this point, so I'm not sure how we did a lot of worship. So I'm not sure how long the conference had really been started at this point, but
Mm-hmm.
we're just singing and we're praising, and some people have raised hands. Everybody's on their feet though. Oh, and I'll have to do a recap for you at some point if you haven't watched the full playback yet. But
Where could they find that
about
playback at?
it's at Passion for Truth at
Mm-hmm.
passionfortruth.com.
Yeah.
There is a link there. I think it may be a private link, because I tried to find it will link you to YouTube where you can watch the entire conference.
Mm-hmm.
I've also have it posted on my Facebook page. I'll make sure I'll go over tonight and post it on the Shalom Letters page as well. But so anyway, so we're at this part of worship. Everybody still maybe got a little bit of inhibitions. The hands are raised, but everybody's on their feet. Oh, what I was going to say. At some point, somebody, I think it was Jim, was preaching Joshua 1:3. I think this was way hours before. I'm thinking this is 6 or 7 hours before
Mm-hmm.
he ever even mentioned that scripture. He had us all take off our shoes. So I
Wow.
do know that I'm barefoot at this point
Mm-hmm.
in my mismatched socks. But I didn't care at that point. So Holy Spirit is nudging me to go lay hands
Mm-hmm.
on the woman at the end of the row. Hadn't talked to her yet. And at this point, we had the lady who was with my friend, my new friend, who was
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the first seat. I hadn't spoken to her yet. And then we had a family who was sitting next to Chad, who took up the rest of the row. It was, I believe, a brother and a sister, and then the brother's wife, and then their 2 kids. And I'll come back to them later, too. So Holy Spirit just kept nudging me to go lay hands on this one. I'm like, nope, it's not what I'm hearing. It's not what I'm hearing. Nope. And it just kept nudging me and kept nudging me, and like 3
We
times.
all
I'm
know
like,
God does never ask you to do anything awkward. A study of the prophets in the Bible will show He will never ask you to do anything unusual. Doesn't happen.
so I'm just pretending like I'm not hearing, and I'm just struggling so hard. And Jim asked, if, I think it was Jim, it could have been Nathan, asked them to raise
So
their
Jim
hands.
Staley or Nathan Harmon, the
Mm-hmm.
presenters.
They raise your hand if you have been experiencing suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
She raised her hand. Still getting cold chills from it. So I lost my first husband to suicide. There's just been Chad lost his father to suicide. So there has been a lot of pain with that
And you have an
in our
anointing in that
family.
area because you've overcame it and you faced it before.
I'm still here. Hang on.
Okay. I think maybe that's why you had to be the one to pray.
So needless to say, I ran.
Yeah.
She was only a couple seats down, but I ran at that point. And um, my new friend, she was kind of standing up worshiping, so I was able to just go behind her and go straight to the lady sitting on the end. And I don't have words. I don't have words. I began to pray for her, and I know this sounds crazy. But I've never experienced anything like it before,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know this sounds crazy, but I felt her pain, and I haven't told her this, so I'll probably call her before I post this, but I felt it, and I cried ugly and loud, but it was me crying, but it wasn't me crying. I don't know how to. I don't
Well, you were crying on her behalf. That happens. That actually happens to intercessors a lot.
experience that ever before. I could feel it, and it hurt, and it was a sadness. Like the reason I think I can say it was me, but it wasn't me, because part of it was me, because to know that I didn't go the
Mm-hmm.
first 3 times that he told me to go lay hands on her, I was crying for that. I was crying because I already loved. I can't explain it, but I loved her. I
Mm-hmm.
loved her in a way that was immediate, and I didn't even know her name, but I loved her. And to know that she had that pain and that she had that thought broke me. It crushed me. And so I was crying. I was bawling, booing, because I was hurting because of those feelings that I didn't go the
Mm-hmm.
first 3 times, and that I loved her and that she had those. But then again, I was crying for her because I could feel what she was feeling. And I don't even know how long I was there, but I ended up monkey arming like around her neck, and I was on my knees on the floor, and I don't know how long I was there, but it was something. It was something. It was just, like I said, I have words, I'm rambling, but at the same time I'm still speechless
Yeah.
over that moment. But she felt something too, because she kept coming back to me saying, I love you. I remember she grabbed my face one time, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know me, I went through a spell in my life where I felt like I lacked love, and I really sought love
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times in the wrong places. So
Yeah.
I'm very
As we
needy.
all have.
I'm very needy when it comes to love. I need to feel loved. And she grabbed my face. She grabbed my left cheek. She just like cupped my cheek, and she was like, I love you. She's like, you are so precious. And so, like, she was filling me up too. Like, and it was just a moment. And it was such a God moment. It was and like, you could feel it. The air was thick. Like,
Mm.
I know I posted it on Facebook, but I'm
The
like, the
kavod.
Holy Spirit is palpable. Like, I feel like I can reach out and grab a handful of it. Again, I know I sound crazy right now,
Or in Hebrew,
but
they actually say the weightiness of God. Like when the air becomes heavy, that's how they describe the Shekinah, the kavod, the glory of God is like a heaviness. that you can feel.
I didn't know
And
that.
and that's exactly what you're describing. Is like a heavy feeling of the air, like a bad heavy, like depression,
No,
but
no.
like a just a thickness almost.
Yeah.
And that's how they describe it. That's really literally the heaviness. And and that's also to honor. It means to give weight to. Like there's honor your parents. There's a scale, and whatever side of the scale is taken into consideration, what would benefit your parents, that gets the most weights added to it. But the kavod is the heaviness. That's the concept of the heaviness, and that's exactly how they describe it. Like when the glory filled the tabernacle, it was the heaviness.
Mm.
But and those are like kingdom moments too, and not only you feel the kavod, the heaviness of God, but you also the Catholics and the early Protestants call it communion of all souls. Like when you get to the kingdom, there's no fig leaves, there's no fear of each other, there's no secrets from each other, there's no reason to not love each other. So, but you get that with
Mm.
millions of people from all ages from the beginning of mankind until now, with millions of them at once. And that's when you get to the kingdom. It's like that, but with multiplied times billions of people.
Oh my gosh, Brian, I feel like I'm sheeting in cold chills right now because you just, I know you haven't watched the playback yet, and that's kind
Mhm.
of what makes this like even more interesting because that was one of the things that if and everybody just I can't recount it. Go watch all the videos that Jim posted prior to. Go watch the conference. Um, he, Jim had a vision.
Mhm.
I think it was a vision. I don't. I'm pretty sure it was a vision from the Lord. He got a word. Needless to say, he got a word from the Lord, and he put out a video before the conference where he shared the word that he received from the Lord, and it had to do with taking that first footstep, crossing the river over into the promised land. And one of the things that he mentioned, I don't remember if it was in the vision or at the conference, was again us being barefoot, taking that first step for where our feet trod. And he talked about stripping off the garments, how before you go into mikveh, you take off all your old garments. And that was one of the illustrations. You said no fig leaves,
Mhm.
you're just basically, and his word was naked, basically naked, you were
Yeah.
just there. And
And in
that,
Judaism, in the mikveh, the women do it where there's just women, but they do get completely no makeup, no earrings, no nothing
yeah,
when they go in the mikveh.
yeah. And yeah, I wish I'd have thought not to wear makeup. It got ugly. I wore makeup 10 minutes in. My face is black. His mascara's running. I don't care. I don't even know it until I go to the bathroom later. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Be
I
ashamed
went to the
of.
bathroom and washed my face later. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't help to have 2,000 people in
Mhm.
one heart. There was love oozing everywhere.
Mhm.
Like I said, the spirit was thick and everybody singing the same words, praising Yahweh. It was just everyone was there for the same purpose, and that unity was
And that's what the
amazing.
Sabbath's supposed to be every. That's what the Sabbath was intended to be every single week. And the 8 biblical feasts, that was what those were intended to be with millions of people because the entire country is doing it at once. The entire nation doing it at the same time in the cities. The 8 feasts are supposed to be there every year, and then the Sabbath every week for that. And that's what marriage is supposed to be like. The kingdom is supposed to be like, and that's why the first century church grew so much. It says in Acts, basically because they loved each other so much, they went to each other's houses and they ate a meal together every single day of the week just to experience that.
Yeah, yeah.
They
And
wanted to
again,
die for this. I mean, there wasn't like regular church. They were willing to die for each other, or die for the faith, and die for each other.
yeah, that's the kind that is I had a
Book of
bite
Acts.
size 9-hour taste
Hmm.
of that. And I can account for everything you just said. When I left there, I was posting on Facebook. I'm like, I want to do this every moment of every day for the rest of my life. Like,
Hmm. And you talk.
I'm gonna be addicted to that. I'm gonna be seeking that feeling. This feeling, I still have it. I'm gonna be seeking that from this moment on. I mean, I can totally see. I mean, because I'm that way with my pastor and his wife. Like, I just
Hmm.
love them so much. I want to see them every day. And
Uh,
now I have all these new people, and I'm like that with you because I talk to you every day. I'm like, Brian, I have to talk to you today. There's this indescribable just
mhm.
hunger
Yeah.
for that.
And fear is opposite of love. So when the fear is removed, then you can love like that.
Mm.
When we learn not to be afraid of each other and
And
insecure and of being exposed and not being enough and all this stuff.
oh, and guess what song they sang right after that?
What's that?
Fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in
In
your
your love.
love.
That's right.
Mm.
Yeah, that's perfect love drives out fear. I think it's in John. John Paul Jackson, the guy I learned German interpretation from. He went when he's alive. He took a team to Burning Man. These are nothing but pagans, right? I mean, straight out heathens. And they had a tenet where they'd rename things like a dream interpretation or prophecy. They just give it a less overtly Christian name. But they had people just come in the tent like, "Can I just sit in here? Can I just sit here and stay here? I feel safe here. I don't feel safe anywhere in the world but here." So they'd have people come in the tent and just sit on the floor and not get a dream interpretation or anything. They would just sit there because
Mm.
they wanted to be in the kavod because they couldn't find peace anywhere else in their life. And I mean, you guys, a lot of you guys don't know me back in my 20s, but I was wearing black nail paint and reading Anne Rice novels. And I was a hot mess. I mean, depression and anxiety doesn't begin to describe it. I had a Stain CD and a Smashing Pumpkin CD, and one of those was going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in my dorm room in the military. So I was bad place, and really angry at God for 10 years. My mom died when I was a kid. I mean, just mad, mad, mad at God. And, Smashing Pumpkins mad at God. Black Nail Paint, Vampire the Masquerade, Anne Rice novels mad at God.
Yeah,
And,
rebellion.
but the Christians on base, they had a little home group. They go to somebody's house. And I wasn't claiming to be a Christian. I very much claim not to be Christian. But they would go to their home dinner, their group and their dinner. And that was the only place I felt safe. I felt remotely cared about. I felt loved. Only place I didn't feel tortured. So that's just the power of hospitality and fellowship and community, even for non-believers. It's just amazing. So I was like you were saying, it's life changing and you can't get enough of it. Even if you don't want nothing to do with church at all, you still can't get enough of it. But then if you are a believer, how much more so? That's what
Um,
people are saying about the Sabbath. It's like, no, no, it's like, no, we get to be with our spiritual family for like 8 hours. It's like Thanksgiving once a week, but you actually like these people.
I'm trying to think. I'm sorry. I was listening, but I wasn't
Okay.
listening at the same time. So,
Choosing the
do
man's
you?
job in the conversation.
You're so funny. You're so funny. That's true. It's funny because it's true.
How women feel, guys. So this is how women feel all day.
So I believe it was so the two primary characters that both
Mhm,
Jim and Nathan, because I'm pretty sure they didn't coordinate what they were going
mhm,
to preach, but Jim primarily spoke out of Joshua,
mhm,
but Nathan spoke on Joshua and Caleb.
mhm,
Of course, they had the good
mhm,
report, but there was this portion in Nathan's sermon, and I want to go in. I'd love to go back and pull it up. I first wanted to say it was Caleb, and I apologize for not knowing scripture better than I do. Cannot call it to mind right now, but maybe it was Joshua. One of them would not leave the tent. They
Joshua.
were in the presence of God, and they would not leave the tent.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that's
Moses would go back and
exactly what
forth.
you just described.
Yeah, Moses would go back and forth for instructions, which is kind of like my personality. Give me instructions, I go do it. I don't. The worship thing is really difficult for me. Um, but Joshua would just go be there with God. Like he would just like exactly what you're talking about. Just kind of bask in the presence, as they say, like soaking music. Those CDs they have.
Mm-hmm.
He would just go soak. I think it's what they call it today.
Yeah, yeah. So again, you weren't even there, but yet you know the message. Like there's just so this is just a beautiful thing that is just
Hmm.
being pieced together, and it's so intimate and so interwound between all of these people that are just, I mean, it's just so beautiful. um, there was another gentleman who wasn't there, and you and I are both Facebook friends with him now. Thankfully,
Hmm.
you tagged me in a post earlier, and so I'm going to read his post. His name is Raymond. So his post says, at this moment, he was 3 hours in to this. I think it was about 9 hours that I was there.
Hmm.
The 12-1 broadcast, which took place in Branson, Missouri this weekend. And he said, I'm very encouraged by what I see and hear so far. So this is his summary of it and his reaction. He said, unity in Messiah and true healing and revival begins with contrite hearts confessing sin and recognizing that God, not us, is the one who makes us holy. We must confess that God is primary and sufficient, and that we are secondary and insufficient.
Mm.
First, the gospel transforms us. Then we obey his commandments, which are a blessing that we get to, not have to obey. Our obedience provides evidence that God made us holy. And our obedience to the Spirit and to the letter of God's law is a striving to confirm our election, as Peter writes. He says it was humbling to see corporate confession of sin, people ministering to one another in prayer. He said, I'm so glad that the healing being focused on is spiritual healing. Not that praying for physical healing isn't good, it is good. But what does it profit a man to have his entire body healed, but eventually die without being healed inwardly by the Holy Spirit? It's absolutely nothing. He said, I'm so humbled and glad that we serve the God who forgives and redeems. He takes filthy mud and straw covered despised slaves in Egypt, and he makes them kings and priests. He washes us clean and he gives us new life. He takes depression and gives us hope. He turns suicidal addicts and makes them into ministers of the gospel of the kingdom. Yeshua doesn't come to heal the well and the whole. He doesn't come to give an inheritance to those who trust in their riches. He comes to set the captives free and bind the brokenhearted and heal the sick and the shepherd stinky sheep. The spirit that sanctified Joshua and Caleb and inspired them to have a good report and desire to cross over into the promise of God needs to be the same spirit that by faith we submit our minds, hearts, wills, desires, and flesh to every morning and every evening. Only by being sanctified by the Holy Spirit will we be transformed by him into a body that crosses over into the fullness of the promises of the covenant that God has given us. We must be wholly committed to the Holy One of Israel. And that sums up our conference. That was 9 hours in just a couple of paragraphs.
Do you? So there's two words for time. There's chronos time and kairos time in Greek. Chronos time on the clock. You can measure it. And there's kairos time, like the feast, the Sabbath, your kid's born, these kind of things. Which is like time you can't really measure. Do you feel like you kind of left time for a while? Like you just totally lost track of it?
Oh, completely lost track of it. There's no way I could, when I go to work and I'm there for 9 hours, no offense, I love my job. when, when that clock is ticking and it's 9 hours, I'm ready to go.
Chronos time. You're counting that clock.
And I feel like it. I feel like it too. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm hungry, I'm ready to go. Not not at this conference. I wanted to stay. If we could have, I would have been there for days.
And you just feel like you just like totally lose track of time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it honestly felt like I was there an hour, two, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it flew by. I couldn't get enough of it. I wasn't, my cup was full, my cup was running over, but it was still like, give me more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Just the thought of leaving that atmosphere, of leaving that spirit of just, I didn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing. I mean, sure, I wanted to come home. Sure, I wanted to see my grown kids. But, I mean, yes, I wanted to do all that. But at the same time, that was where I needed to be. That was where I wanted to be. That was home for that moment. Like that's it has to be that unity, that corporate worship, that I know I said kind of in the beginning, I kind of digressed on my recap. In the beginning it was, a lot of inhibitions, but, it wasn't very long. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but there was a huge amount of people on their faces, on their knees, there were groups of people laying hands on each other. We had such a connection. Again, it's just really indescribable. I've never experienced anything like it. But those ladies that sat with me, we were just praying over people. We saw a guy who was struggling behind us, and we all turned around, even Chad, and we're laying hands on the guy behind us. And we ended up just it was me and the two ladies and Chad. We were just all praying over each other. We were just all arms interlocked, all four of us. And the lady sitting next to Chad, she's like, I've got to be a part of this. She's like, I don't know y'all, but I love you. And she just jumps right in, and immediately, like, we felt that same way. She was just oozing love. I know I've said that twice now, but she was just, her voice, her countenance, it was just this sweetness, this generosity, this humility. It was, I don't know. There was something very particular and sweet about this lady, and she just joined right in, and just immediately she, it's like we had known her forever, but we didn't even know her name. And so we worshiped together, and we prayed together, and we cried together for hours and hours. And one of the reasons that I bring this lady up is, we worshiped with her for so long, and she was so beautiful. And, my husband was sitting next to her, so he was talking about, he's like, she sings, she is beautiful. And,
Is this a lady from Belize? Is this a lady from Belize?
Yeah, this is a lady from Belize.
Yeah.
And, normally I would be like really jealous and intimidated, but I wasn't jealous or intimidated or anything. I was just, I'm in complete.
Is part of fear.
Was in complete agreement. Yes, she is just
anointed.
Yes, perfect word. And we're talking about her, and she had gone. I had thought she had left, but I guess maybe she had just gone, either to the marketplace or gone to the parking lot to the car maybe or something. So we were scared she had gone, but she ended up, she had come back in. And so we got a chance to talk to her again just for a moment before we left. And I'm like, I feel so bad. I didn't even get your name. And so she tells me I have her first name only. And we're like, where are you from? And so she said, I'm from Tennessee. I'm outside. I don't live in Nashville. I live outside of Nashville. And Chad goes on, and, well, I said, I'm from Kentucky. And then I'm like, well, actually, I said I was from Kentucky first. And she's like, well, I'm from Tennessee. And I'm like, oh, where? So she says, I'm outside of Nashville. And Chris, I'm sure when you think Kentucky, you think Louisville. Everybody thinks that. When you think Tennessee, you think Nashville. I mean, that's just the nature of it. So we're thinking we're miles apart, hours and hours and hours apart, not realizing. And so I'm like, well, my husband is, he was born in Indiana, but he's really from Tennessee. He's from the Clay County
We'll claim
area.
him. We'll claim him.
And so I'm like, Clay County. He's like, she's not going to know where Clay County is. And I don't know if it just, she didn't hear, because there's a lot is loud.
Mm-hmm.
So she probably didn't even hear what county that, he grew up in. And, he's like, I'm from the Dell Hollow area. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know kind of that area. But thinking he lives in Kentucky now. And so she didn't, we end the conversation there and we go on. So we're talking about her on our drive home. Because again, I'm just recapping this whole event all day today. So I cannot stop talking about it. And so we're just, beating ourselves up. We didn't get her last name. We need to look her up. And so I think of your fellowship finders. I'm like, oh, my gosh, I know she's in Tennessee.
Tennessee Torah Fellowship, Chattanooga Torah Keepers, Kentucky Torah Fellowship.
I'm like, and Chad was like, no, there's how many people in the United States? You know, she just said she's from Tennessee. We don't know that she still lives there, or maybe she lives there now, but she's not from there. He's like, you know, how do you know? How are you going to find her? I'm like, I'll start with Tennessee. I'll check a couple of my friends that I know are in our circle and are in that area, and maybe by chance they have a friend named Sherry. I'm like, I need to reconnect. I just felt this drawing. I had to reconnect with her. I just had to. And sure enough, she wasn't a part of the group, but like a lady that I knew had a lot of connections that lived semi in that neck of the area. Actually lives closer to me than Nashville. And sure enough, there she was. Her name is Sherry. I'll give her first name. There's Sherry. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Moral of the story, don't borrow money from Melissa. She will find you. She knows people that know people that live out in the woods and own shovels.
That's so funny. Chad kind of said the same thing. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, you missed a call. He's like, I would hate for you to like stalk me or something.
This is why I pick up my phone, guys. My picture will be in a bottle of Manischewitz in 24 hours if I do not return that phone call.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's true too.
Are you alive? Did you eat your vegetables today?
I missed your phone call today, and my first message back was, are you okay? Exactly. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. But anyway, long story
short. Your mom. Your boy mom.
This is true. It shows sometimes.
So you finally found Miss Sherry from the conference?
I did. I found Miss Sherry. So a little bragging at first. I'm like, I found her. And told you I would. And so I click on her profile. She lives minutes. Like 5, 10, maybe minutes from Chad's Mill.
Wow.
We have literally been on top of them, probably in the same Walmart at the same time, countless numbers of times, and have not met them.
And you went all those years without knowing anybody out there.
Yes, we went 10 years without knowing, you know, I had Tanya. Mm-hmm. That was it. For years, for years and years and years, it was just me and Tanya. Well, 10 years, it was just me. And here are these people down the road that we didn't even know were there. But Yahweh takes them because they probably felt pretty alone too. Yeah. Because we only have the one Torah keeper friend in common. So he took them to Branson, Missouri. He took us to Branson, Missouri, and sat us down in the same row. And
she's in Kentucky. Well, you're in Kentucky. She's in Tennessee. You meet in Missouri. You almost didn't meet, but your husband was listening to the Spirit, at least, and took you right to the seat you're supposed to be at.
Yes.
To meet somebody from
next door, basically.
A different state, but next door. That's amazing. I told you that story when I hadn't started. I started these regional groups, like Jamie Birtles from Hebrew Hearts runs them all now. But I started these groups for each region. But right before I did that, I just knew a lot of people. And people, hey, I'm looking for fellowship. I don't know anybody. And this poor lady is in Oklahoma, had lived in this town for 10 years, never met a Torah keeper in her life. So the lady writes me like a week later. Says, I lived here 5 years. I never met a Torah keeper. It's no town in the middle of nowhere. It's like, wait a minute. That town sounds familiar. So I wrote them both, like, where did you say you live? It's like, I think you should meet. You're both in the same town. Here's this other person's Facebook link, and there's the other one's Facebook link. And she's like, we're on the same street. I'm walking to her house right now. I'm like, oh my gosh. So for 5 years, they could have avoided all that loneliness, but there's no way to connect them. But they're in the same street, in the same town for 5 years, didn't know it.
Wow.
Like, had no fellowship or nothing. And they're like, right there. I'm walking to her house. I'm walking to her house right now. Like, you're walking to her house? and that's like, wow, we got to connect these people somehow, some way. So we all these regional groups pop up, and then like, you know, the singles groups and everything, and the veterans group and all these groups. But yeah, it's amazing that you guys met, but how important that is also. You see how important it is to God, is what I'm saying. Psalm 68:5, he places the lonely in homes.
Yeah, well, it reminded me of a time Chad and I'm not a history buff, although I'm becoming more and more of one all the time. Chad and I were actually in a Bible museum
Mm-hmm.
in I guess it's technically in Pigeon Forge, Sevierville area. It was just a really small Bible museum. They have some amazing artifacts. If you're ever in that area,
Mm-hmm.
look them up. It was
Will
one
do.
tiny room, but I was in there for hours. Um, but the gentleman who owned it was so kind and so generous with his time that he just basically walked with me for a little while, and he was just telling me about all of these pieces and how he
Mm-hmm.
acquired them and all of this history. But he had this one little piece that stuck with me, and I never really knew why until today. But he had this pocket Bible, I think is what he
Mm-hmm.
called it, with him. And he was explaining that it was such a teeny tiny Bible because whatever time period and country that this particular Bible was from, that church services and Bibles, any possession of those was outlawed and illegal. And I think you were
Mm-hmm.
facing death if you got caught with a Bible. And I'm sure you better than I can,
Yeah,
but
yeah. A
he was
lot of
saying that
places.
they would take these pocket Bibles and that they would, hide them like underneath in like their armpits. And
Mm.
if they were small enough that they could put them in their armpits and hold their arms, still talk, move your elbows, and they wouldn't drop. They wouldn't drop their Bibles.
Wow, I didn't know
So,
about that. I know the Waldensians used to put them in their clothes, like between the layers of their clothes, they would sew the pages of the Bible into their garment, like in the Middle
wow.
Ages. But I'd heard of that. That's amazing. So, like, is it like a
So,
little 2 inch tall one or inch
yeah,
tall? Or?
yeah, it was just, maybe 2 by 3 or something. It was
Oh,
just this
wow.
really, really small Bible. And so as he was telling me this story, again, I may be reciting it
Hmm.
incorrectly, but was telling this story about how because church services were outlawed and illegal at the time, that obviously they still were having underground church somewhere somehow, but they didn't really have a way to communicate with each other
Hmm.
without the risk of it being intercepted and then
Yeah.
death. So they 100% relied on God to literally direct their paths.
Hmm.
So every Shabbat, I don't know if it was Saturday, Sunday, regardless, whatever Sabbath they were keeping, when they wanted to get together to study and honor and worship Yahweh or God, that they did not communicate with one another at all. They literally let the Spirit lead them, and miraculously, week after week after week,
End up
they
at the
would
same place.
somehow show up at the same place.
Wow. That is amazing.
And I got to experience that.
Mm.
God picked the people that were going to sit in my row and picked us all at different times
Well,
from
it's
different
called a
places.
divine appointment.
Yes, and literally directed our footsteps to the exact seats that we sat in.
In Iran, it's a thing right now, where it's in the Middle East all over because, they will literally kill you for owning the Bible still. It's like the Catholic Church Middle Ages or the Protestant Church in England. They would behead you for it or burn you at the stake. Um, how they meet is Jesus is appearing to people in dreams. They call him Isa, but Jesus or Yeshua is appearing to people in dreams in a white robe. And the preacher will stand out in front of a building and just ask random Muslims walking by, Shia Muslims, did you see the man in the white robe? Did you see? And no one knows what he's talking about, unless because everybody's got a white robe on. It's Iran. Um, but the people that had the dream will say yes and get all excited and say they had a dream about him.
Mm.
He'll ask about this dream. He'll know which dream to ask him about. He's like, total strangers. Did you have this dream? Did you have a dream about this guy? Yeah, when they do have the right dream, he knows to bring them to the underground church. But it's all through
Wow.
dreams. And he's appearing in North Korea and China and orphanages of kids in China, but they do it by the dream. It's very spirit led. These are like people like Jesus appeared to them in a dream. They're the only believer they've ever met in their life. And this pastor will say, "Did you meet the man in the robe in your dream?" kind of thing, and just totally through the dreams. 2012, 2022, still going on that they meet in the dreams. But I think that fellowship is a lot richer and fuller than just like five people. I kind of sort of believe, or I had nowhere else to go, or my grandma goes here.
Oh,
You know,
completely.
there's a whole different level of
Yes.
of things. Joe Dallas, he founded Love One Out Conference. It's a conference for former homosexuals, but he's a Baptist pastor. He used to be homosexual, came out of it, and he had this whole thing he did at that conference, which was I saw a video of it. He said a church should be more like a bar. When you go to, he was one of the first people to reach out to the gay AIDS community, HIV community back in the 70s when the church totally shunned them, absolutely shunned them. He would go on radios
Hmm.
and reach out to people. They say, hey, we don't care if you have HIV, you can come to our church. We don't care if you used to be gay, you can come to our church. So, but he had this phrase, a church should be more like a bar. Because when you go to a bar, which he's very familiar with, you don't have to dress up a certain way to be accepted. You don't have to present yourself a certain way. You don't have to pretend your life is perfect to go to a bar. You have this immediate fellowship with perfect strangers
Hmm.
in a way
That's
you don't
true.
have to hide. And a church should be more like a bar. And Monty Burks, who is head of the faith-based initiative for Tennessee, so his job is to go into churches and teach churches how to help people with mental illness and addiction. He does this
Hmm.
for the state, his job, and he has this good quote. It says, "Relationships the opposite of addiction." Because we had this kind of relationship available, people wouldn't settle for the counterfeits. Which
Right.
like the partying, the bars, and these things are just counterfeits of the thing you described.
Yes,
They're
Nathan
counterfeits, and
said that. Brian Nathan said that a couple of times that we
oh
are
wow.
seeking the authentic.
Hmm. And that's the only thing we think available is the counterfeit. It's the counterfeit or nothing. And once you've had the counterfeit, it's better than nothing. So you think that's the best it can ever be because it's better than what you had before. And people who never had the counterfeit don't understand it. So then it causes isolation. We've had the real thing. You can't go back to the counterfeit.
Hmm.
Because exactly, it's a relationship is opposite of addiction. John Eldridge wrote Journey to Desire, and he was saying everything we're addicted to here is a smaller scale counterfeit of what we're intended to have in heaven. And he wrote this
Wow,
whole book
yeah.
about what you're describing. It's like this communion of souls. Like you can have that without drugs or alcohol, but you can have it times a million. Like drugs, sex, and alcohol, the three things
Yeah.
you get that kind of communion. But no, you can have it times a million in the kingdom. And you can have it, amplified here on earth. The real thing. You get a piece of the real here on earth instead of just the counterfeit. But it says the gifts of God are without repentance, but when God gives a gift, it comes with it no sorrow. So if you're trying to get alcohol or drugs or promiscuity or whatever to get that emotional need met, there comes a price. There's a negative price to that. There's a consequence. There's a that you don't want. But when God gives you something, it doesn't come with these negatives. It's like that conference. You didn't go to that and end up with a hangover. You didn't end up, all these terrible things that happen seeking the counterfeit. When you get the real deal, there's no downside to
No, no, other than I had to leave and come home. But, you know,
it. Other than Chad getting to hear about the whole way back.
yeah, he might have something else to say about that. But no, seriously, no, he's still, truth be told,
He
it's
loved it.
it's what 11:30 here. We should have been in the bed hours ago, but we're both still
Pumped.
so full.
Hmm.
Yes. It's just like, I mean, you put it in a good way. It we're on this high from this conference of experience. We experienced it. We saw it. We felt it personally. Something that we've never felt before. Maybe we've had little pieces, teeny,
Hmm.
appetizers here and there.
Yeah.
Like we had such a big serving of it that we just feasted on for hours and just now can't get enough of. And we're addicted to that.
Hmm.
And it's just we want to do it again. We want to do it again. I want to be, which I've since we've been in this walk, you and I both, and I'll hats off to you. I talked about you for hours to Chad on the way home about
Poor
all the
guy.
things that you do that you don't get credit for and you don't seek any glory for. You were talking about the fellowship groups earlier just on this episode, and you didn't take any credit, but you did that. I remember when you sat down with a map and you studied and you connected and you created all of these different fellowship groups for throughout not just the United States. I believe you have some internationally, and then you
Yeah,
sought out
Europe,
your.
Africa, Asia.
Yes, you did that. You have been so instrumental just in what you have done for the kingdom and bringing people together that it's just the weddings that you've been responsible for in Hebrew Hearts, the fellowship and connection of you bringing people together in these fellowship finder groups. Like, it's amazing. Just today on my way home, there was a lady from who used to attend our fellowship in Cave City. She has a friend in Wisconsin who was looking for fellowship, and she posted it in Dana's, healthy Messianic Torah Sisters leading Healthy Active Lives group.
Mm-hmm.
And she posted it in there, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to add you to the Great Lakes group. So hop online real quick. I added her, and I'm like, hey, when you get in there, add your friend, just make a post, and people show up.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, just I'm here. And then suddenly all these people are like, oh, I'm here.
Yeah, I saw
And
that today. I
that's,
was wondering, like, she in Kentucky or Great Lakes, but I'll add her. It's fine because a lot of times people live somewhere, but they're looking at moving, or they live somewhere now, but they're from somewhere else, or they're going to
yeah.
visit somewhere. So hey, just join, and it's a community board. It's not posting teachings, or we don't even allow that. It's hey, I live here. I'm moving there. I'm traveling through there.
Yeah, Chad
Need
and
a
I do that
job.
for a vacation. That's why
Yeah.
we're in South Carolina groups, we're in the
Hmm.
Florida groups, we're in all of these different groups
Oh, we've had
because,
people break down the side of the
yeah,
road. They lived in Oklahoma, but they're in Florida. The car breaks down. They post in the Florida group. Oh, I live in that town. I'll come pick you up.
yeah, yeah, immediate family. That is one of the things that I love about this. I know a lot of people give it a bad rap because there's sacred namers and there's, all these Torah terrorists out there
Hmm.
who, want to tear each other down. But the majority, the unspoken majority that don't get the notoriety that I spent this weekend with, it's love, it's generosity, it's servitude, it's worship, it's unity. Like, it's just amazing. I'm so happy and I'm so thrilled and I'm so encouraged and just so on fire now to just take that little seed and that little ember that they shared with me. Actually, it's not little, it's pretty, it's 5'3" right now. So, and just take it and run. Like, that's why I couldn't wait. That's why we're doing a podcast in the middle of the night. I'm like, Brian, we got to do this now. Stay up with me.
Can we do a podcast tonight? I'm like, are you okay? So it's great. But I'm a night owl, but very, very excited. But and there's a theory about in the first century that everybody's in Jerusalem and they got persecuted till they got scattered. It's like, well, God's trying to grow a church. Why is He letting them be persecuted? Because it forced them out of being clustered together. So they had to take it to different areas of the world. Otherwise, they just
Mm,
all hang out and have a big old party in Jerusalem for the next 20 centuries. But they had to take it elsewhere, and that's what you're meant to do: is take it home with you
yeah.
and take it
Yeah.
to other people and take it to your church, your congregation, and show them. It's meant to be more than a book club.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Gosh, that should be my next meme. That's good. Um, absolutely, there's just, I mean, and how could you not? Like, that's why I'm taking it to the podcast areas right now. How could you not experience that? I mean, it's almost that same. I remember when, and I think we've all been there, done that. We all had a little bit of Torah terrorist in us in the beginning when
Mhm.
you
Oh, I
first
did.
open the book and you're like, what? There were
Liars.
7 animals? There's
Yeah.
7 pairs going on the ark? You lied. The Sabbath is Saturday? You told me it was Sunday. What?
My pastor
And
has a little meme. It's with the Pope and his with the staff and the white hat, and he's got like his eyes are on flames or lasers. It's like, heresy. It's like
but we
they
got
lied to us.
so just on fire because
Yeah.
we had something and that we saw
Mhm.
not everybody had. And
We
so
were
what did we
zealous for the
do?
law.
We were so zealous. We ran out and we crammed it down people's throats, which obviously was not the right thing to do.
Relatives still barely talk to me. I don't blame them either. I wouldn't talk to me either.
We learned from that, but that zealousness was true and genuine. We
Mhm.
had good intentions, which we know how
Sometimes
that
bad
adage goes.
information
Yeah.
from the internet, but we had good intentions.
But that zealousness kind of went away. We got so focused on the truth
Hmm.
So in the letter, which was a great thing because we were super dissecting the scriptures. We were looking for Yeshua everywhere, which was amazing because we found him and we got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, but we totally missed the spirit
Hmm.
part. And we lost that zealousness that we had in the beginning. That zeal was gone.
Hmm. And we just get tired. We're just tired of arguing. I mean, I almost walked away. I didn't walk away from Torah, but the whole movement, I'm like, I'm just tired of arguing with people.
Right?
This is my
Right?
whole life's arguing. I mean, I could go back to being married if I want to do that. You know? But so why am I arguing with people all day? I don't even like to argue. This is
Right,
the whole thing
yeah.
now. Is we learned all this stuff and we argue about what we think we know, and then we
I
learn half of it
know.
we don't know to begin with because somebody made it up and put it in a book and sold it to us. I mean, we don't.
Yeah.
This is
We
ridiculous.
thought we were such holy righteous people there
Hmm.
for a little while we did. We thought we were doing this great thing because we were keeping all of these commandments that we were still miserably failing at, but we were
Yeah.
really trying, thinking we were doing it. And we just thought we were so fantastic and let's not listen to the Jews who've been doing this for thousands of years.
In functional communities,
We know better
or
because
even
we
the
picked up
Christians
on
that managed to get along. I mean, I was first got to Nashville. I just got the Air Force from the College of Belmont, where I met some mutual friends. They were famous Caleb musicians now, but there's a group of charismatic Christians. I totally was not in alignment with their theology at all, but they just got together and they just loved each other. They go to each other's apartment and hang out till 5 in the morning, just hanging out and hugging people and playing guitar. And
Mm.
I mean, it's amazing. It's like a holy version of Woodstock. But
Oh,
because the
that's
people went to
beautiful.
Woodstock, they had the counterfeit, but they still talk about it, 60 years later. But the charismatic group, I was still in my very anti-God phase. In some ways, I was a lot chilled off on it, but I was still pretty angry in ways. So I was back and forth. But anyway, they didn't keep the Sabbath like I did or pretended to do or tried to do, but they were so loving and so connected and so much community. They would just hang out 8, 9 hours and they'd share your food and pick you up on the side of the road. And, if your car broke down and so loving. And I just wonder, like, if the people that had that watch us argue and bicker all day, all the time. It's like, no, no, you got to come here and do what we're doing. Come over and argue with us. It's like, no, I'm not. Even if the theology is not exactly right, I don't really blame them for not giving up their fellowship to come have an argument.
Right, exactly. That's not attractive. We're supposed to be able to reflect his light and it attract people to it. And we weren't reflecting his
Hmm.
light. We were reflecting our own. We had set ourselves up to be
It's very
our own
soulish.
idols. Yeah, it was very, very ugly for a little while. And there's still probably a handful of people out there who still may be like that.
It's like a
But
pillow fight with
it's a
two Torah
process.
scrolls. It's like a pillow fight with two Torah scrolls. So
Yeah.
this is what we're doing to each other instead of like a hug. It was just Torah.
My zeet seats are longer than yours.
You're giving me a whip like we're whipping each other with zeet zeet. Rawhide over here. And and this I don't really, but we say they just don't want the truth. It's like I don't think the truth is a problem. That's not the part of the equation that they're having an issue with.
No, no, no,
It's the lack
no.
of spirit that goes with the truth. But you
Right,
have the
it's like,
spirit strong people and truth strong people, and the truth people take a while to adapt to the spirit, and the spirit people take a while to adapt to the truth.
which is so beautiful and amazing that, looking back, even at times when I didn't necessarily realize when I was young that Yahweh was with me, leading me and guiding me, even then in my days where I didn't acknowledge him,
Hmm.
that, I was raised up in a Baptist church where I was introduced to Jesus
Hmm.
and I was saved and then I went away. But I found my way back and came back to him in a Pentecostal church with a woman preacher, which was the first time I really upset my family and became a black sheep in the family. But man, to this day, I still talk about that experience that was so influential on my life because at a time when I needed it most,
Hmm.
they showed me love.
Yeah.
There were always like 4 or 5 people standing at the door.
Hmm.
And when you walked in, they had that worship music going, and you got hugged at least 10 times before you made it to your pew. And it wasn't just, this little pat on the shoulder kind of one arm hug.
The
No,
Baptist
the
tap.
Yeah, the Baptist tap. It
It's
was
like
not
it's
a.
like jujitsu. They tap 3 times and let them go.
That is so funny.
We
That's
got
where I
hugs on
came
tap.
from.
We don't have alcohol. We got hugs on tap.
Oh my
You
gosh, that's
tap when it's over. You
so
tap. You're done
true.
hugging.
And
Yes.
the little
I get that
soft
period.
half handshakes.
Yeah, yeah. And I get the I get the
But the
Pentecostal squeeze here in
oh
Chapel
my
Cleveland
gosh,
sometimes.
man, they would hug you. It was the good full 5 second hug. You
Hug you
got
till you squeak.
told
The squeak is
yes.
when you let go. When you hear the last bit of oxygen leave, you can let
They
go of the
told you they
go.
loved you and they meant it. They loved the Jesus into you. Like, and that was, man, they didn't keep Sabbath. They kept Christmas and Easter and all that stuff.
Oh, the first time I came
Cannot
to
tell me that Jesus wasn't there. He was there because it was love. And that's how the scriptures say that we will recognize his followers by the love, not their zeet.
hmm oh, I
Not
first
that
came to
zeet are important.
yes, yes.
Let me clarify what I said. They're still
Blues eat
important.
eat. But I first got to Cleveland. Well, I first got to Chattanooga area in 2016 January. It's one of the most depressed times I've ever been. So I walked in the Perry Stones. First time it opened actually. Walk in the door. First person sees some very, very, very Caucasian man, blue eyes, red hair, but he had like a basketball jersey on and a gold chain and sneakers. But he was a sight. But he walked up to me. Didn't say his name. Just threw his arm around me, hugged me until I squeaked. Hugged me until the last bit of oxygen came out. And it's like, I love you, dude. And I see Jesus in you, dude. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's good. I can't breathe. And
You're
he
turning
just kept
blue.
hugging me and hugging me and hugging me. But I was in a really, really scary, bad, depressive episode. I mean, it was scary, depressive. And he just hugged me for like 10 minutes. And then he started prophesying. He's like, you're going to write a marriage book. You're going to do
Hmm.
marriage counseling. You're going to have a TV show. This is 2016. You're going to have a TV show. You're going to be on the radio. I'm like, you lost your mind, man. And, but, he was just like that with everybody every time I saw him. But I said the word Torah to him. He's like, the what? No, literally no
Wow.
clue what I was talking about. But,
But he
when
brought you a message
he brought me a
from the
message.
Lord. Yeah.
Yes. And he definitely, and that hug was precisely what I've been here like a week and didn't really know anybody. And I mean, it was, January, ice cold, pitch black, don't know anybody, working part time. It was just all kinds of bad. Living in somebody's basement. It was a nice basement, but I was renting a basement. But that hug is exactly what I needed. There was no judgment there. There's none of that. I'd have to pretend to have a 401k, an office job, and an
Mm-hmm.
SUV, or didn't have to pretend any of that. He's just like, I just love you because I see Jesus in you. And yeah, I mean that's exactly what I needed. But he literally didn't know what the Torah was. Quite literally, no
Wow.
idea. And I'm friends with his cousin now. But he died. But that's exactly what I needed. But it's the most unlikely source. Oh, he had tattoos everywhere. You could just tell, not Torah keeper was written all over it. Not at all. But he used to be in a gang. Well, most of my friends used to be in gangs. But just totally not expected. But exactly what was needed. And we cannot dismiss those people
Mm-mm. No,
as
I'm
not
telling you.
holy or not loving or not educated or whatever. It's like, well, they think they're exactly what Jesus. They're doing what Jesus needs them to do for where they're at. You can add some knowledge, but sometimes I think God doesn't give people the Torah because of what it would do to them. Like you could ruin this kind of hug you guy by making him a Torah terrorist by the addition of knowledge.
The entire Torah hangs on loving God and loving your neighbor, and that was loving your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think God knows like the people that could get some knowledge and maybe recover from it, but some people don't recover. I mean, some people become Orthodox, conservative Jewish, and totally leave the faith, and they leave Judaism,
Hmm.
become atheists. I've seen it happen. So sometimes the Torah thing is not it's not the people rejecting truth.
Hmm.
It's sometimes it's what they see what the truth does to people. And sometimes it's just God has them doing what He has them doing, and when he's ready to show it to him, we'll show him.
Right.
But if we do it too early, it'll mess us up, mess him
Right.
up.
His time, not ours.
E-
We don't.
Exactly,
God is smarter than we are.
exactly. But I got like a 30, I got like a 3 minute hug, but you got like a 9 hour hug.
Yes, I did. Yes,
So
I did, and I can't wait to do it again. I'll go ahead and give another plug for Jim Staley and Passion for Truth Ministries. They've already reserved the building again for Passover, so not sure. Of course, we'll have Passover here at home with the family. We'll have Passover with our fellowship. So we're pretty much booked for Passover. So I don't know if I'll be able to make it out to his, but man, on one hand, it's like, how do
maybe
I
some
not go?
maybe some new friends you met at the conference.
Right? Exactly. Yes.
There
That
you
would be
go.
amazing for them to be here at Passover.
I don't know if you guys are trying to. If you're one of those lonely people that you're isolated, go to Shalom to Your Heart, and under the way, there's multiple tabs for business owners and groups, and you're trying to find other Hebrews. It's all right there, especially Hebrews nearby. But just go to shalomtoyourheart.com and look under the way, and there's a lot of ways to get connected there. And if you're single, we have Hebrew Heart Singles. There's been over 200 weddings so far, 5 years, plus countless friendships, and all the regional groups Melissa mentioned are there too. And Melissa's you're gonna post a video to our Facebook. You said.
Yeah, I'm gonna post the replay link for the entire conference that I have been just going on and on about all night long. So that way, you can go there and experience it for yourself. So again, the post that I read earlier was from a gentleman who wasn't even there. He was watching it on the replay link, and he could feel the spirit. He could recognize the spirit, and it was authentic, it's recognizable, it's magnetic, and that it comes through. I haven't watched the replay, but from the testimonies that I've heard from others who have, it's there. You can have the same experience in your own living room, or in your car, wherever you may find yourself watching the playback. Just have some tissues.
I haven't seen it yet, so I gotta watch it soon. When I'm not at my office or something. Other people can't see me cry.
Man, it is so good. Yep, just
Awesome.
set aside some time, even if you have to watch it in bits and pieces. Just bookmark it on YouTube and come back to it, and just a little bit of warning: you're not gonna want to get up. You're gonna want to watch the whole thing in one setting. I promise. It's so plan to binge watch. If we can watch a Netflix series for an entire weekend, trust me, you can set aside some time for this. You will be blessed. I promise.
And bring a bear-proof cooler. That's the lesson we've learned.
Yeah, we need to get with.
Time you go to Hebrew anything event, bring a bear-proof cooler.
We need to get with Jess and make sure we don't pack whatever it was she had in there.
It was honey buns. Chad Collins, be warned. It was honey buns.
Well, we are toast.
My daughter still talk. My oldest, I've got two daughters. Aliana, my oldest, was like 6 years old and met Chad and Melissa. And Chad Collins made that girl a honey bun in the microwave. That's all she wanted to eat for 2 months.
I'm telling you, it's life changing. Honey buns too. We took our snacks because we knew we were going to be there for several hours on Shabbat. Obviously, not going to buy anything, so I had my little bag packed, and you can bet there were 2 honey buns in there. So honey buns were at the conference.
I was going to give your husband a nickname, but that would be weird. Can't call him honey bun in public in Kentucky.
I don't know. I think that would actually be hilarious. So Chad, your nickname is his nickname right now is Rojo. Because
Roll Tide.
he's. I never thought about that. No, it's actually because his cheeks are red.
Oh, because it's Spanish. Rojo is Hispanic people.
Yeah. So his nickname is Rojo.
You should get him a little yellow shirt. Just put honey bun on it.
No longer Rojo, it's honey bun. That's so cute.
Explain that to your friends.
Oh, it's awesome. Okay, well, again, I just want to drive everybody to passionfortruth.com. Watch the playback. Go check out Jim Staley. Go check out Wilderness Driven Family. That's Nathan Harmon's ministry site.
Yeah, him and
Um,
his wife live in an RV with their kids, and they travel the country doing this. I've been to one of his conferences.
this was my first experience. I actually listened to him talk with PD the night before that, which is PD is Rise on Fire Ministries.
Yeah.
Amazing. Go check out that one too. Actually, I'm going to digress from my own story just for a minute. Years ago, and we'd have to get with PD probably to see when it was, but PD wrote a book
Mhm.
about spirit and truth. I
Yeah,
think that may be the name of the book.
reigniting spirit and truth.
Mm,
Yeah, well, I can the name of it. It's a white book, and it says "Reigniting Spirit and Truth" is the
yes.
subtitle. Let me look it up. Let me Google it. But P.D. van der Westhuizen, he's from South Africa. He met his wife from Virginia in Hebrew Hearts.
Let's
Um,
play right there.
Shameless plug. They met in Hebrew Hearts, and he lives in Chattanooga now,
Yeah,
20
yeah.
miles from where I
We
live.
definitely need to get together with PD and Christina and do something with them. Hopefully, maybe we can even interview them soon. But yeah, his book is Reigniting Spirit and Truth, and I just
The Call of the Bridegroom. Yeah, the Reigniting Spirit
mm-mm.
and Truth. The Call of the Bridegroom.
So I remember this came out in 2018. Looks like so 2018. I read this book. I this same zeal I got on fire. I
Mhm.
read this book. I think I may even sent you a copy. I think I sent Tanya a copy.
I think you
Yeah.
did. I actually, and I met PD in Rosh Hashanah in North Carolina, and he did a bunch of street evangelism. He's like deliverance ministry, like homeless
Mm-hmm.
people, evangelism. It was really cool. But yeah, you did send me that book because when I met him, I was like, "Oh, you wrote that book Melissa sent me," kind of thing.
Yes, I mean, my goodness, that was the first time that my eyes were open to the missing piece of what I was missing in my walk. I had the spirit before, but I
Mm-hmm.
left it and was so focused on the truth. And then he brought it
Like
back
we
together and was
swapped one
like,
for the other.
yes. And he's like, no, they
Mm-hmm.
work in unison. You need the spirit and the truth, which clearly that's what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
But I just
John four twenty
hadn't,
four.
I had just glossed over it. And it's like, yes. And I got so on fire. But at the time, didn't have a fellowship that I was attending. I didn't, we
Mm-hmm.
just, you were in Chattanooga. I was in Kentucky. We were so far apart, which I would come down and visit with your fellowship
Yeah,
sometimes, but not, it wasn't feasible to drive that far that often. So it was just, okay, here I am. I'm on fire. But
yeah.
it's
My
just
girls
me.
would have cavities. They got any more cavities once a
Okay,
month.
yeah, that's true too. Yeah, it's probably not good that I was not good. And
They
I
bring
like to
like
spoil
shopping
them.
bags full of stuff. They loved it.
I take them and buy them cake at City Cafe, and then we go shopping.
Yep.
And I don't
And,
have any little girls,
and
so
Chad with the honey buns. But yeah, it was a good time. But we're so separated. But you can the Bashim Yeshua.
yeah.
But Reigniting Spirit and Truth is his book. Rise on Fire is his website and his YouTube channel. But he's got all these chapters looking at Amazon now about each chapter is like different feast. And then like how to basically reinfuse the feast with the spirit. Not just do the feast, but do the feast in a spirit led way, a spirit filled way.
So when you guys go online, you watch this replay, buy this book. The two go hand in hand. I mean, I've been saying it for a while. We were just kind of saying it between ourselves. We're like we could feel it kind of boiling up for a little while. We were just like, yep, it's coming, it's coming. Like we prayed 10 years for a fellowship, and it was like, yeah, we know it's coming.
So
It took 10 years, but it came. And now we've been saying it's revival's coming, and we got to go to the Phil Wickham concert, and there were so many moments. And then just to be able to experience that corporate worship, the corporate humility, the corporate unity, it was just, we're like, okay, we're closer.
and
We got to
Tanya is
experience.
Melissa's tour keeping cousin in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Yes.
family has two, so you're not alone. Well, my great aunt was an Adventist, but every family is like two Sabbath keepers, it seems, and the rest of the family thinks they're crazy. But
Pretty
usually
much.
there's usually two in each family, somehow, some way. And Tammy Smith Grayson is a dear friend of ours in Kentucky. Her and her friends actually came to my congregation a couple months ago, and they gave me a bag of rocks. And they had taken a rock from the site of every revival site in like Western North Carolina, East Tennessee, North Georgia, and Kentucky. all these revival sites historically, and all those sites is prophesied to be like the third great awakening is supposed to happen in Cleveland, Tennessee. And this area used to be very highly Cherokee area, but she has a bag of rocks from all these different revival sites, like in Joshua where they took the stones and crossed the Jordan. She's got a bag of
Preached on
rocks,
that.
stones.
Preached on that in the conference. Sorry to interrupt, but you
Yeah,
just quoted it
the
again. Go ahead.
Cherokee link to the end times outpouring was the Perry Stone sermon, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, the Cherokee link to end times outpouring. He's got a whole video on that. And I also have a statue of 2 feet. I don't know if you guys saw it when you were here last, but there's a porcelain statue of 2 feet, two beautiful
From?
feet. It's a whole long story, but like
Well,
Joshua,
no, I mean, there you go. What? Give me chapter and verse because I have a
Joshua chapter
point.
1. Yeah,
That's
Joshua
exactly
chapter 1,
that's
verse 3.
exactly
Yep.
what Jim was preaching at the conference.
Which is like, I've never heard this verse. Someone actually gave me that verse. It's like, Brian, this will be your confirmation of something in your life. Like, okay, that's something very specific. What? That's a weird, random, obscure verse. I never heard it again for 3 years. And then all of a sudden, the past 12 months, it's like the fifth time it's come up.
Yeah, it's everywhere now.
But read the verse to them if you have it up.
I don't have it up, but I will pull it up real quick.
Okay, Joshua chapter 1, verse 3. She's pulling it up. And the whole conference is talking about feet, right?
Yes, the whole conference. It was crazy. Let's see. My internet's being slow. It's coming. Again, just another plug that I am in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. But
They filmed Deliverance like near the Walmart, where the Walmart used to be.
So Joshua 1:3, I'm not sure what version this is, but it says, "Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I promised to Moses."
There you go. And the rest of Joshua 1 continues on to say that if you keep, not as in legally keep, but as in guard and obey and honor and live by the principles of the commandments, then that would be the result.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just go, oh, well, bebop along your way and you'll be fine. I'll give you whatever you want. But it's like, there are certain principles and guidelines to this, the rest of Joshua chapter 1, but that was the verse.
Yeah, and then no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you.
And
Be strong and courageous. Go ahead.
And Joshua is a variant of Yeshua.
Yes.
So be strong and courageous, rock Kazakh Emetz. Be strong and courageous. There's Eric Lundy has a really good 3-minute YouTube video that's a Hebrew war cry. But what that means, rock Kazakh Emetz, be strong and courageous. I want to make like a greeting, like we'd like put our fist over heart, say rock Kazakh, meet each other.
Oh,
you see another Hebrew, rock Kazakh.
I like that. I was just reading on down through here, and I'm having flashbacks to the conference, and it says, "Pass through the midst of the camp and command the people, prepare your provisions for within 3 days, Jordan, to go in and take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess." And that was the whole premise. And he has a beautiful teaching on the Gilgal, where they crossed over, where the stones are in. Just go watch it. I won't spoil it because I'll ruin it. But yeah, just so good. And Brian, that I know I was texting you during like the whole thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to be listening to this right now. This is for you.
You're a bit excited.
Yeah, a bit excited. Still, yeah, definitely go to passionfortruth.com. Watch the replay. Get PD's book.
Let's do a series with Shalom. If you're on Facebook, Shalom Letters. Maybe Melissa could like one a day, like post a video or post a book, Amazon link to a book, or post like PD's website. So as like a recommended resource.
Absolutely. And that was another thing that was just really evident. Gosh, I'm just
easy to find.
You had Passion for Truth Ministries. You had Wilderness Driven Family. You had Lion and Lamb there. The worship equipment, a lot of the, I guess, musical instruments, the worship team. They pulled together and brought in all that with Mason Clover.
Just Mason.
So many ministries were there working together, not competing against each other, working together. And that's one of the first times that I think I've ever been witness to that too, because it's usually, oh, I'm going to plug my ministry. I'm going to,
Mhm.
these people are mine, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
What do you think about
bad
the
or
temple? It's like they
anybody
all
that I've
work.
been to before, but I've seen that happen.
What do you think about the temple? All the Levites, the temple guard, the temple singers, the
One
priest,
body, many members.
local Levites. All of them were all simultaneously. They weren't divided amongst 50 churches in the same town.
Mm-hmm.
They all did the same thing at the same time without competing. Without every 5 feet there's a $20 million building that's empty 6 days a week. And
Man,
blowing all that money. All that staff, all those resources were shared.
yeah.
That's
That's the
amazing.
great point. Great point there. Yeah, so definitely go check all that stuff out. Like Brian said, it'll just be easier. I will post something daily. I usually go on and do some kind of post, share a Bible verse or something every day. So for the next several days, Letters Facebook page. Just want to drive you to Brian's website. It's com. He also has a YouTube. Also has a TV show. Go check out Let's Talk Shalom.
Let's talk
Um,
shalom.com.
yeah.
Filming that
So,
tomorrow night.
hey, there you go. Can you give us a little sneak peek? Yeah, this probably won't
Oh,
post until your TV show is aired. So,
yeah. So I'm going to have as soon as I get from the station, I'm going to have YouTube. The shows on YouTube on the website, so you can watch all of them. But the first one's my friend Michelle Reimer from Fairhaven Counseling Ministry. She will be doing a thing on the prophetic gifting. And then we'll talk about Fairhaven Counseling Ministry. They do deliverance, intercession, inner healings, steps to healing in Christ. They do a lot of those kind of counseling, spiritual, pastoral counseling sessions. She's actually training me in those, and I'll be ordained by them later this month. And then
it's fantastic celebration.
my friend Eliana Brooks from Warrior Bride Ministries, they help people who have been victims of sexual trafficking. They provide them shelter, counseling, deliverance ministry, treatment for dissociative identity disorder. People have been victims of satanic ritual abuse. They help with them. They're near Atlanta. So we're going to interview her on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And my pastor from Nehemiah Restoration Fellowship, Jonathan Brown, we will be interviewing him on different Bible versions, how we got the Bible, translation versus transliteration, because he's got the biggest brain I've ever met. So we're going to ask all these geeky, scholarly questions of him, because he's one of the few people I know that would know the answer. He's getting his master's degree in biblical languages. He's almost done, and he's probably going to go on to a PhD. So I got to
Y'all,
snatch him up before he's Dr. Brown. It won't be time.
Y'all, let me tell you. So normally I don't, Brian's congregation, Nehemiah Restoration Fellowship. So normally I don't get to tune into that because, obviously I'm in Kentucky. So our fellowship, we start or Brian's, those are maybe about the same time. But so normally I'm in fellowship, so I can't live stream his. And, we get busy with other ministry activities and families and work throughout the week that I haven't been able to go back and watch a lot of their replays on their fellowship. But so this last Shabbat, not this one yesterday, but the one before, I was actually in quarantine just for being exposed. I wasn't sick, but I was able to be at home and actually stream it. And oh my gosh, I was glued. So good. The worship was great. The word was great. I really enjoyed, what do you call it, the liturgy?
Liturgy, yep.
Oh, yes.
The
So
Hebraic.
good. Mm.
We get the prayer shawl, pray over the kids, and sing the Shema and some other Hebrew liturgical things. We're a Messianic congregation, and my youngest daughter is named Shema Israel. So they start singing the first time she was there. It's like, oh, she was so confused. Like, why is everybody singing my name? Is
My
it my birthday?
name. Oh.
And but yeah, it's really good. And Jonathan's doing a series on Galatians. It's like a 10-part series, and it's a whole different viewpoint of like historical context of Galatians. It's a little bit different than what 119 even does. So it's nrfcommunity.org, Nehemiah Restoration Fellowship, nrfcommunity.org. And he's got a YouTube link, and we've got all the previous sermons on there on YouTube, and you can also live stream and check out some other resources.
Yep. So I'm sure you go to any of these websites that we've mentioned here tonight, from passionfortruth.com to Wilderness Driven Family to Shalom to Your Heart. There are given links on all of them. For Brian does so much. He gives so much of himself, and I don't understand how he does. Here he is up. It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Chattanooga, and he's doing a podcast with me. So, God bless Brian for this. So please, you feel led by God to support Brian. His PayPal is shalomtoyourheart@gmail.com. He gives and gives and gives and gives, and he just, he has no limit. Where he is weak, God is strong. So, Brian just keeps on trucking. So please, please, I'm begging, bless Brian for all the work that he does, because I know I'm blessed from him. And if you know Brian, I know you are too. So
Thank you.
please
Bob, let's
support him
chat
in
some
that.
honey buns too.
Yeah, we do take donations in the form of honey buns. Anything sugar, I don't turn away pretty much. So.
Send them some honey bun money. Send them some honey bun money. Just make a little note in there.
UPS will be showing up next week, and Chad will be like, "Oh my gosh, what is this blessing?"
Your love offering.
If manna was only honey buns. Well, he would never leave the wilderness, so maybe that's not okay.
There's a burnt offering and the glazed offering. This is the glazed offering.
Okay, it's supposed to be. I laughed out loud so loud.
You're very sleep deprived.
Okay, so with that being said, I will let you close us out in prayer.
Yahweh, thank you for our time together in the podcast, for all of our listeners that joined in with us, and ask you to teach us all how to have true fellowship and community. And for those who are isolated, give them divine appointments, as we've seen so many of, to bring them to spiritual family. Psalm 68:5 says he placed the lonely in homes. So we ask you to do so. In Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. So again, I just thank you, Brian. Thank you, audience. We appreciate you listening. We hope you've been blessed by this broadcast. I know that you'll be blessed if you go and check out all the resources that we've mentioned throughout the night. Again, it'll be on our Facebook page as well. But again, we thank you so much. We love you. God bless you. And we'll see you next week. Shalom.